My wife told me, "Your family drama isn't my problem," so I kicked her mother out of my house. I am 45 years old and married to Emily, who is 39. We've been married for 7 years. We both work full-time, have no children, and live in a house I purchased before we got married, though I've considered it our home from the very beginning. Emily has always been a very structured person. She loves order, routine, and having absolute control over her space. I'm more flexible, more go with the flow. I never thought this difference would be a serious issue until the event that triggered everything. A few months ago, on an ordinary afternoon, I received a call from my younger brother, Michael. We don't usually talk every day, but we have a close relationship. As soon as I picked up, I knew something was wrong. He was crying, not holding it back, but sobbing, with a mix of desperation and shame that made my stomach drop. He told me he had lost his house. This wasn't a metaphor or an emotional exaggeration. He had literally lost the home he bought 4 years ago with his life savings. For years, he worked overtime, saved every cent possible, and sacrificed so much to own his own place. It wasn't a mansion, but it was his, or so he thought. According to what he explained, a man had arrived the day before, accompanied by attorneys and legal documents. They informed him that the house did not belong to him. The true owner had discovered that his nephew had fraudulently sold the property using forged deeds. My brother had been the victim of title fraud. The seller was never the actual owner. When the real owner found out, he initiated a legal process and won. Legally, he had every right to reclaim his property. It didn't matter that my brother had lived there for years, done renovations, or paid property taxes and utilities. In the eyes of the law, he was not the owner. They gave him a very short deadline to vacate. When he finished telling me everything, I didn't know what to say. I just listened to him cry. He told me he didn't know what to do, that he felt stupid, that he had lost everything just for trusting people. He didn't ask me for help directly, but it was obvious he was completely overwhelmed. I hung up the phone with a lump in my throat. I sat in the dining room for several minutes, thinking about him, about his situation, about what it meant to become homeless from one day to the next. I also thought about what I would do if I were in his shoes. For me, the answer was immediate and clear. My brother couldn't stay on the street. When Emily got home from work that evening, I told her what had happened. I was direct. I explained the fraud, the scam, the eviction. I told her that Michael was devastated, had nowhere to go immediately, and that I thought the right thing to do was to let him stay with us for a while until he could reorganize his life. I expected concern, maybe doubts, perhaps practical questions, but not what I received. Emily furrowed her brow right from the start, not out of sadness, but out of annoyance. "No," she said almost immediately. I thought I hadn't heard her correctly. "What do you mean, no?" I asked. "He's my brother. He just lost his house." She sighed with irritation and dropped her purse onto the table. "I hate having guests," she replied. "You know how I am. I don't like having people in the house, much less someone who isn't part of our routine." I tried to stay calm. I explained that this wasn't a social visit, but an emergency. I told her it would be temporary, that we could set clear ground rules, that he wouldn't be here indefinitely. Nothing seemed to matter to her. "I don't want to live with anyone else," she insisted. "This is my house too, and I'm not going to tolerate an outsider here." The word outsider hurt more than I expected. I reminded her that he was my brother, that he had always been respectful, that he wasn't a stranger. I told her that if the situation were reversed, I wouldn't hesitate to help someone in her family. That was when Emily looked me dead in the eye and said with a coldness I hadn't heard before, "Your family drama isn't my problem." I stood there in silence. I didn't know how to respond in that moment. I felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and sadness, not because she didn't want to help, but because she didn't even seem willing to consider it. To her, this wasn't a human tragedy, it was an inconvenience. The conversation ended poorly. We each went to sleep separately that night, without reaching any agreement. I spent hours awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my brother, his situation, and also my marriage. I never imagined that a single phrase could change the way I viewed the person I shared my life with so drastically. After that conversation, 2 tense days passed in the house. There were no shouting matches or open arguments, but the atmosphere was heavy. Emily continued with her routine as if nothing had happened. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about Michael. He called me several times not to ask for help directly, but to tell me how things were progressing with the eviction, how complicated it was to find a place on such short notice, and how expensive everything was. He tried to stay strong, but his voice gave him away. He was emotionally and physically exhausted. After one of those calls, I hung up and sat in silence. That's when I remembered something important that I had overlooked in the midst of the conflict. I owned another house. It wasn't a secret. It was a property I had bought years ago as an investment, a detached 2-story house located in a different suburb, not close to where Emily and I lived. For some time now, that house hadn't been generating any income for me because I had lent it to Emily's mother. Her mother had lost her own home to foreclosure. As it was explained to me at the time, she stopped paying her mortgage for several months, and the bank seized the property. I didn't get into too many details, but the result was clear. She was homeless. When that happened, Emily asked me for help. She told me her mother had nowhere to go, that she was going through a very difficult time. I didn't hesitate. I offered her that house rent-free. We didn't sign a lease or anything formal. I simply gave her the keys and told her she could stay there as long as she needed. That house had an important feature. It was a duplex. The first floor and the second floor functioned almost as 2 distinct dwellings. The second floor had independent access from the outside with its own staircase. They didn't share a kitchen or a bathroom. Technically, 2 people could live there without ever crossing paths. When I remembered that, I thought it was the perfect solution. That same night, I spoke to Emily again. I explained calmly that I wasn't talking about moving my brother into our house anymore. I told her he could stay at the investment property, the same one where her mother lived. I explained the layout of the house, that they wouldn't have to interact, that they would barely see each other if at all. Your mother would continue living there just as she has, I told her. My brother would use the second floor. It has a separate entrance. There would be no conflict. I expected that, at the very least, this would open a possibility for an agreement. Emily's reaction was even worse. She looked at me with evident annoyance, as if what I had just proposed was a personal offense. No, she replied again. My mother doesn't have to live with anyone. I tried to explain that it wasn't about living with anyone in the traditional sense, that it was a temporary situation, a real emergency. Emily crossed her arms and interrupted me. My mother went through the same thing as your brother, she said. She lost her house. And you know what she did? She endured. She took responsibility. She didn't start crying hoping someone else would rescue her. I felt my jaw clench. He isn't crying to manipulate anyone, I replied. He was the victim of fraud. It's not the same thing. She shook her head. It is exactly the same thing. Both made bad decisions, and now they want others to pay the consequences. I didn't know how to respond to that immediately. Then Emily said something I still remember word for word. You'd be an idiot if you think someone else is going to save your life. We all suffer here. That brother of yours surely wants to take advantage of you, so don't be an idiot either. Those words hit me harder than the first time. She wasn't just refusing to help. She was disqualifying my brother, questioning his intentions, and insulting me in the process for even considering it. I got up from the table and walked into the living room. I needed space. Emily remained seated without saying another word. I slept very little that night. While she slept peacefully, I replayed my memories with my brother over and over again. I remembered when we were young, and I had a serious accident at work. It was a difficult time. I spent several weeks unable to move properly, in constant pain, not knowing if I could ever work like I used to. My parents were gone, and many friends disappeared when I stopped being useful or fun. The only one who was there without fail was my brother. I remember entire nights where he stayed with me, sitting in an uncomfortable chair, just to make sure I didn't need anything. He helped me get up, eat, go to the bathroom if necessary. He never threw it in my face. He never made me feel like a burden. I also remembered how he lent me money when I had nothing, how he helped me start over when everything seemed lost, not because he was obligated, but because we were family. Thinking about that made Emily's attitude seem even colder. The next day, I tried to talk one more time, hoping she would reflect. I told her this wasn't just about my brother, but about values, about how one acts when someone close loses everything. She was clear and firm. I don't want him living there, she repeated. I don't want problems. I don't want responsibilities that don't belong to me. That's when I understood she wasn't going to change her mind. I felt trapped between two loyalties, that of a husband and that of a brother. But I also started asking myself something I hadn't considered before. What kind of person did I have by my side? If, in the face of such a tragedy, her reaction was contempt. That night, after another call from my brother, I made a decision. I didn't take it out of rage or impulse. It was a calm but firm decision. A decision based on everything I had lived through, on everything I had received from my brother when I needed him, and on what I was seeing now in my own marriage. I decided I was going to do something about it. After talking one last time with Emily and reaching no agreement, I locked myself in my home office. I wasn't agitated, but I was completely resolved. I knew that if I didn't act, my brother would end up paying for hotels or crashing with acquaintances while another person occupied a house that was legally mine without contributing a dime. I picked up the phone and looked for the contact of David, my attorney. We had worked together before on real estate matters, so he knew my legal situation well. When he answered, I was direct. Hi, David. We have a situation. There is someone living in one of my properties, and I need them gone. My brother is going to stay there for a while. I need you to evict the current tenant. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. You mean the duplex? He asked. Wasn't your mother-in-law living there? I took a deep breath before answering. Yes, it is her, but that doesn't matter anymore. It is my property, and I need it vacant immediately. David hesitated for a few seconds. Legally, it can be done, he said. Since there is no lease, it's a tenancy at will. We can serve a notice to quit immediately, but I want you to be clear that this is going to generate a serious family conflict. I know, I replied. Just do it. All right, he finally answered. I'll handle it. I hung up without adding anything else. I didn't feel relief or satisfaction, just a strange calm like when you make a difficult decision after thinking about it for a long time. A few minutes later, I picked up the phone again. This time, I called Emily's mother. I didn't do it out of legal obligation, but because, despite everything, I wanted to give her one last chance to hear it directly. She answered quickly. Hello, I said. How are you? I wanted to speak to you about something important. She didn't let me finish. I already know what you're calling for, she replied with a dry tone. Emily told me everything, and my answer is no. I hate guests. I don't want that guy in the house, no matter how much of a brother he is to you. I felt my teeth clench. Still, I kept my voice controlled. I understand your stance, I said. I just wanted to confirm your decision personally. I have nothing else to say, she added. That house is my home now, and I am not going to share it with anyone. I paused briefly. Perfect, I replied. That was my doubt. Thank you for making it so clear. I hung up. There were no screams or threats. Everything was surprisingly cold and direct. That was exactly what finished convincing me that I had done the right thing. There was no willingness for dialogue or empathy, only demands. A few hours passed in silence. I went on with my day, trying to keep my mind occupied. I knew that at some point, Emily would find out what was happening. That happened that same afternoon. Emily arrived home visibly upset. As soon as she closed the door, she dropped her bag on the sofa and looked at me with wide eyes full of rage. What did you do? She asked, almost screaming. My mother called me crying. She says some lawyers arrived with eviction papers. Do you know anything about that? I looked at her calmly. I didn't feel the need to raise my voice. Yes, I replied. I ordered the eviction. Her expression changed from surprise to absolute anger. Are you crazy? She shouted. That is my mother. And that is my house, I replied. My brother needs a place to stay. Emily began to pace back and forth, gesturing with her hands. Do you realize what you are doing? She said. You are throwing her out onto the street. No, I corrected. I gave her enough time and options. She decided not to accept any of them. My brother has no home right now. It doesn't seem fair to me that he is paying for hotels while your mother lives comfortably in a property that is mine without contributing anything. You can't compare, she shot back. My mother is different. She isn't, I said. Both lost their homes. The difference is that I am willing to help both, but only one accepts. Emily looked at me with contempt. You are a monster, she said. How can you do this to an older woman? And how can you tell me to abandon my brother? I asked. How can you call him a user without knowing his real situation? That was enough to make me explode. She started insulting me. She called me selfish, insensitive, cruel. She said she had always known I only thought about my family and that I had never put her first. She said I was destroying our marriage for someone who, according to her, didn't deserve it. I didn't respond to the insults. I simply listened. When she finished, I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. I am not destroying anything, I said. I am acting according to what I believe is right. She shook her head, tears in her eyes, but without a trace of doubt. I hope you regret this, she said. I hope when you need help, no one extends a hand to you. I stared at her, and for the first time since this all started, I felt like I understood exactly what was happening. I'm sorry, I replied, but your family drama isn't my problem. After I spoke those words, Emily froze for a few seconds. Her expression changed completely. The rage on her face transformed into something different, almost calculated, as if she had suddenly found an exit. I know, she said suddenly. Let's follow the original idea. Your brother can live on the second floor, and my mother on the first. Her voice was softer, but it didn't sound conciliatory. It sounded urgent. I watched her carefully. I understood she wasn't proposing this because she thought it was fair, but because she had already realized the situation was slipping out of her hands. I'm sorry, Emily, I replied, but no. My brother is uncomfortable with visitors. I prefer him to be alone. She observed me as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. What did you say? She asked, raising her voice. Now it turns out your brother is uncomfortable with visitors? That's right, I answered. I don't want him sharing the space with anyone else. Emily took a step toward me, visibly agitated. Stop saying the same thing as me, she screamed. Stop mocking me, you damn psychopath. You enjoy the suffering of others. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't feel the need. Yes, I replied. I enjoy it. I enjoy the suffering that justice causes to the unjust. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. You're crazy, she said. Completely crazy. She didn't wait for a response. She turned around and ran out of the house, crying. The door slammed shut behind her. The silence that remained was deep and heavy, but for the first time in days, I didn't feel confused. About 2 hours passed. I was sitting in the living room when my phone rang. It was David. The eviction was a success, my friend, he said in a professional tone. Right now, you just have 2 women crying outside the house. Let's hope they get tired and leave in the next few hours. I felt neither joy nor guilt. I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Perfect, I replied. Thanks again for your excellent service, David. It's been a pleasure, he answered. I hung up. I didn't see Emily again that night. The next day, I woke up early. I packed a small suitcase with some basic items and headed to the other house. I called my brother while I was driving. Everything is ready, I told him. You can stay there as long as you need. There was silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sigh. Thank you, he replied. I knew I could count on you. When we arrived at the house, he looked around as if he still didn't believe the place was for him. He walked in slowly, checking the rooms, the bathroom, the kitchen. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and in good condition. I don't know how to thank you, he said. Really, you don't have to, I replied. You're safe here. That's what matters. My brother, with evident discomfort, told me he wanted to pay rent, that he didn't want to feel like a burden. I told him no, that he should focus on stabilizing his situation, on resolving the legal and emotional mess, on rebuilding himself. This isn't charity, I explained. It's family. He nodded with glassy eyes. We said goodbye shortly after. While I was driving back home, I thought about everything that had happened. I felt no regret. I knew nothing would ever be the same after this. Update. It has been several weeks since I shared my story, and I felt the need to write this update because many people asked how it all ended. The short answer is, I am getting divorced, and I am better. After what happened that day, Emily didn't come back home. She stayed with a friend for a while, and then with other relatives. During the first few days, she tried to contact me several times, not to apologize, but to demand that I reverse her mother's eviction. When it became clear that wasn't going to happen, the tone changed. It went from complaints to reproaches, and from reproaches to emotional threats. She told me I had destroyed the marriage, that I was a cruel person, that no one in their right mind would do what I did. At no point did she speak about my brother or the situation in general. Everything revolved around her and her mother. That was what finally convinced me that the problem hadn't started with this situation, it had always been there. I filed for divorce shortly after. It wasn't an impulsive decision, it was a logical conclusion. I realized I was married to someone who only understood empathy when it benefited her directly, someone who viewed help as weakness and solidarity as a nuisance. The divorce is ongoing. It isn't being particularly complicated. We have no children, and the assets are clearly defined. She has tried to present herself as the victim to other people, but I no longer care. I don't feel the need to justify myself or defend my image. Regarding my brother, he is doing better. He is still living in the house and has gradually been recovering stability. He is resolving the legal issue regarding the fraud and has already found a new job. He keeps insisting on paying rent, and although I still don't charge him, we have agreed that when he is completely stable, he will. Not because I need it, but because for him, it is important to feel dignified and autonomous. I am also better. At first, I thought I would feel lonely or empty, but the opposite happened. I feel tranquility. The house has returned to being a place where I can think clearly. I no longer walk around measuring my words or justifying decisions I consider right. This experience left me with a clear lesson. A relationship isn't measured in the comfortable moments, but in how the other person acts when someone close falls. I don't regret helping my brother. Nor do I regret setting boundaries, even when that meant losing a marriage. If I learned anything from all this, it's that justice, though uncomfortable, is sometimes necessary so that everyone faces the consequences of their decisions. Thanks to those who read, gave opinions, and shared their perspective, it helped me more than I expected.